Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife ever did wasn't betraying me. It was the way she turned my pain into entertainment. At a crowded birthday dinner in Arlington, Virginia, she smiled in her glass and said, "If I'm being honest, Oren can't satisfy me." People laughed like it was harmless. My face stayed still, but something in me folded inward and stayed there. Here's how it happened. I'm Oren Dorsey, born and raised in Alexandria, Virginia, the kind of man who learned early that stability is a love language. I'm not loud. I'm not flashy. I show up. I fix things. I pay on time. I thought that was what marriage needed most. Eris and I met at a volunteer event in D.C., folding donated clothes into neat piles under bright lights. She was quick-witted, controlled, the type who made even small talk sound like a plan. She told me she liked steady men because they felt safe. I believed her. I didn't know some people call you safe when they mean easy to manage. When we got engaged, my mother, Kala, hugged Eris and whispered, "Protect his heart." Eris smiled, perfect and polished, and said, "Always." That smile became a thing I studied later because it never changed, whether she was laughing with me or laughing at me. The first year of marriage felt normal, busy, tired, hopeful. I worked compliance for a logistics contractor in Landover. Eris worked as an admin for a private medical office in Silver Spring. We had routines, Sunday grocery runs, weeknight dinners, little walks after work. Nothing looked broken from the outside. Then the jokes started. They were small at first, like tiny pins you could ignore if you didn't want to bleed. If I reached for her hand in public, she would pull away and say, "Save the energy for later, babe." Oh, wait. If I planned a date, she would say, "A restaurant won't fix what you're missing." I tried to talk to her gently. I told her hurt. She tilted her head like I was being dramatic and said, "If you're confident, you won't take it personally." That sentence became her favorite shield. If I reacted, I was insecure. If I stayed quiet, I would agree. The birthday dinner in Arlington wasn't the first time she said it. It was just the first time she said it like a headline. Her cousin, Kavari, slapped the table laughing. Two friends we barely knew exchanged looks that made my stomach twist. Eris watched me the way you watch a reaction video, waiting for something entertaining. I paid the bill because my hands needed something to do besides shake. On the drive home, the radio played low, and the quiet between us grew teeth. I asked her why she would say that out loud. She stared out the window and said, "Maybe you should try harder." That night, I slept facing the wall, not because I was angry, but because I was ashamed in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just what she said. It was what it suggested, that my wife had been disappointed long enough to make jokes, and that everyone around us was allowed to laugh. Over the next month, I started living inside my own head. At work, I stared at spreadsheets and read the same line 3 times. At home, I watched Eris move through rooms like she owned every breath in them. I caught myself apologizing for nothing, just to keep the peace. I made a doctor's appointment in Bethesda, even though I wasn't sure what I was looking for. The doctor asked routine questions, ran routine labs, and told me I was healthy. He suggested stress could affect intimacy and recommended therapy. I walked out holding a pamphlet like it was proof I had failed the test. When I told Eris I wanted couples counseling, she laughed once, short and sharp. "Counseling won't make you somebody else," she said. Then she kissed my cheek like a reward for trying and went back to scrolling on her phone. That kiss felt like a pat on the head. I tried fixes that weren't really fixes. Nicer dates, better communication, earlier nights, small gifts. I cleaned more. I took more off her plate. I thought love was effort, so I kept pouring effort into a cup with a crack at the bottom. Eris started staying late at work. It didn't sound suspicious at first because her office had odd hours and she handled scheduling. But the late nights became a pattern, then a ritual. She would come home smelling like someone else's perfume, then claim it was a patient's cologne or the elevator. She also started doing something new, turning my concern into comedy. If I asked where she had been, she would say, "Here we go, Mr. Insecure." If I asked why she was distant, she would say, "Distance is safer for you." She turned every question into proof I was the problem. My sister, Jolene, noticed before I admitted it. We were eating lunch in National Harbor when she studied my face and said, "You look like you're bracing for impact." I tried to laugh it off. She didn't laugh back. "If she's humiliating you," Jolene said, "that is not a joke." I didn't want to believe my marriage was becoming a place I had to survive. I told myself every couple struggles. I told myself Eris was stressed. I told myself I could fix it if I stayed calm. I didn't realize calm can turn into silence, and silence can turn into permission. The second big moment happened at a game night in Bowie, Maryland. Eris invited friends from her office, women I didn't know well, all bright smiles and sharp eyes. They drank wine, played cards, and made comments that sounded like jokes until I noticed how coordinated they were. One of them, Norel, lifted her cup and said, "Eris, you're strong." Not every woman could stay loyal through challenges. Eris sighed like a heroine in a tragic movie and said, "Love requires sacrifice." Then she glanced at me, and the room laughed again. I sat there feeling like furniture. Not angry furniture. Cheap furniture. Something you don't mind scuffing because it was never valuable to you. When the guests left, I told Eris I couldn't do this anymore. The jokes, the public digs, the way she let other people disrespect me. She stared at me, unbothered. "Then leave," she said, and went to bed. No apology. No softness. No fear of losing me. That was the moment I understood the balance. I was the one trying to keep the marriage alive, and she knew it. The next morning, I went to work early and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building. I asked myself a question that scared me. If she never changed, could I live like this for 10 more years? The answer arrived fast, simple, and heavy. No, I didn't confront her right away because I needed facts, not feelings. I had learned that feelings could be twisted into insecurity. Facts were harder to laugh at. So I started paying attention. Dates, times, inconsistencies, patterns in her stories. I felt like a stranger in my own home, taking mental notes like a witness. One Wednesday night, while folding laundry, her phone lit up on the bed. The screen flashed a preview from a contact saved as Norel, work. The message said, "Keep blaming him so he won't ask questions. He'll sign once he feels guilty." My hand stopped moving. The room felt too quiet, like the air had been sucked out. I didn't scroll. I didn't panic. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone, then put her phone back exactly where it was. If she was building a story, I needed to see the whole plot. Over the next week, I caught more pieces. Eris would leave her phone face up sometimes, confident. Messages flashed, short, clipped, strategic. Don't soften. Keep the narrative. He'll fold. It wasn't just cruelty. It was planned. The why hit me gradually. This wasn't about intimacy. It was about leverage. If she could convince me I was lacking, she could keep me chasing approval while she did whatever she wanted. Shame was her leash. I started checking our shared accounts, not like a jealous husband, but like a man trying to understand his own household. I found unusual charges, rush payments, consultation fees, a recurring payment to a legal document service. Not massive amounts, but consistent, like someone preparing something quietly. I asked Eris about the charges as calmly as I could. She didn't even blink. "Work stuff," she said. "Don't worry about it." Then she added, "Maybe worry about being a husband first." That was her favorite move. Redirect, insult, dismiss. I called my mother that night and asked if I could stop by. In her kitchen in Alexandria, the smell of onions and simmering broth wrapped around me like a childhood memory. I didn't tell her everything at first. I just said, "I think Eris is trying to ruin me." My mother's face tightened. "People don't ruin you by accident," she said. Then she did what she always did. She prayed quietly, hands folded, eyes open. Not because she thought prayer replaces action, but because she believed you should steady your spirit before you move. The next day, I met with an attorney in D.C. named Serena Key. She wasn't dramatic. She was clear. She listened while I explained the humiliation, the messages, the odd charges. Then she said, "If she's pushing a narrative about you, it may be because she's preparing a legal narrative too." Serena told me to document everything, keep my tone steady, and don't threaten Eris with what I knew. "People who control stories panic when they lose control," she said. Let her think she's winning. That advice tasted bitter, but it made sense. I started a folder, screenshots, bank statements, dates, notes about what was said and where. Not to be petty, to be protected. Because the man who can't satisfy his wife is an easy villain in a story people already think they understand. A week later, Eris asked me to meet her at a coffee shop in Hyattsville. She arrived wearing a soft sweater and a face that looked almost gentle. For the first time in months, she acted like she wanted peace. My body didn't relax. It went on alert. She slid an envelope across the table and said, "I want us to reset." Inside was a post-nuptial agreement. The wording was smooth, professional, and one clause punched me in the chest. It suggested that if our marriage ended, certain assets and savings would be considered her separate support due to emotional distress during the relationship. There were also lines about privacy and non-disparagement, written in a way that sounded fair until you read it twice. It wasn't about protecting both of us. It was about protecting her story and her access to money. I looked up and said, "Where did this come from?" Eris gave me a practiced expression. Sad, disappointed, patient. "I've been carrying this marriage," she said. "I need security." Then she added, softly, "Your issues have affected me." I felt something in me settle. Not rage. Clarity. She was building a case where I was defective and she was harmed, so she could walk away clean. The jokes weren't random. They were foundation work. I told her I'd review it. Eris nodded, satisfied. As she stood to leave, she leaned in and whispered, "Don't embarrass me by fighting this. You owe me." She walked out like she had already won. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about how carefully she used shame, how she fed it to other people so it would feel real, how she watched me shrink and never once tried to pull me back up. The next twist arrived through someone I didn't expect, Kavari's wife, Sabria. She called me late and said, "I don't like how Eris talks about you." Her voice was cautious, like she was stepping onto ice. I also don't like what I heard at that dinner. Sabria told me one of Eris's friends had been bragging about keeping a husband docile. They joked about breaking a man's confidence, so he stops asking questions. Sabria didn't say it like gossip. She said it like a warning. When I thanked her, she sighed and said, "I'm not doing this for you to stay. I'm doing this so you don't get trapped." That sentence hit me hard because it named what I had been feeling, trapped by a narrative. I went deeper into the finances and found something worse than the random charges, a quiet transfer pattern. Small amounts leaving our joint account and landing in an account I didn't recognize. It wasn't enough to trigger bank alerts. It was enough to build a private safety net. I asked Eris directly, one calm evening in our kitchen in Fort Washington, "Are you moving money?" She didn't deny it. She smiled like it was cute that I finally noticed and said, "I'm preparing for reality." Then she added, "You're not exactly reliable." That's when I understood the full shape of the cruelty. She would create the problem, then punish me for it. She would undermine my confidence, then call me weak. She would humiliate me, then call me sensitive. It was a loop designed to keep me pleading. I stopped pleading. I started moving quietly. I opened a separate account in my name only, rerouted my paycheck, and kept paying household bills through an agreed method so she couldn't claim abandonment. I followed my attorney's guidance like a map out of a burning building. Meanwhile, Eris kept performing. She told her friends she was staying loyal through hardship. She told my mother I was going through something. She told my sister I was stressed and insecure. She was planting little stories everywhere, so when the big story dropped, people would nod like they already knew. The third twist came from Eris's workplace. She worked around medical records, insurance authorizations, and scheduling, paperwork that required ethics. One evening, I saw an email notification pop up on our shared tablet, logged into the family device. The subject line read, "Compliance review, immediate response required." My stomach tightened. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The timing, the legal document service, the money transfers, it suddenly looked like more than a divorce plan. It looked like an escape plan from something else, something she didn't want me to ask about. I told Serena about the notification. She went quiet for a moment and then said, "If she's under review at work, she may be trying to secure assets quickly." She may also try to paint you as unstable if she thinks you'll expose her. That night, Eris came home late, eyes bright in a way that didn't match her smile. She set her purse down carefully and said, "We need to finalize that agreement." Her voice carried urgency. When I said I needed more time, her expression snapped cold. "Time is not what we have," she said. The next morning, she hosted a small gathering at Kavari's place in Prince George's County, supposedly family bonding. I knew why she wanted an audience. She wanted to shame me into signing. Public pressure makes private traps feel normal. Eris did what she always did. She turned me into a joke. She raised her cup and said, "Pray for me, y'all. Marriage is humbling." Then she added, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Some women marry love. Some women have problems with marriage." The laughter that followed felt rehearsed. I stood up calmly, the way you stand when you're done being seated in disrespect. I didn't shout. I didn't insult her. I said, "You're right. The truth matters." My voice sounded steady even to me, and that steadiness changed the air. I handed Eris an envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of the messages about keeping the narrative, the post-nup clause, and the transfer pattern, dates included, amounts listed, nothing exaggerated. I also included a simple timeline of the public humiliations, where, when, and who was present. The yard went quiet. Not dramatic quiet, real quiet, the kind that happens when grown people realize they were laughing at someone's harm. Kavari's smile faded. Sabria covered her mouth. Norel, one of Eris's friends, stared at the pages like they were suddenly hot. Eris's face tightened first, then cracked into performance. She tried tears fast, like flipping a switch. "Oren, why are you doing this to me?" she whispered, as if I was the cruel one. Then she reached for the papers to rip them. I held my hand up gently and said, "Don't. Let it stand." Eris looked around, searching for allies, and found fewer than she expected. Because evidence does something gossip can't. It forces people to choose whether they will lie on purpose. Even the ones who didn't like me couldn't pretend the messages weren't real. That's when the connected twist snapped into place. Sabria stepped forward and said, "Eris, is this why your job is investigating you?" Eris froze. Her eyes darted. The word investigating landed like a brick. At that moment, everyone understood the post-nup wasn't about love. It was about a deadline. Kavari asked, "What investigation?" Eris tried to laugh it off, but her laugh came out thin. Sabria didn't back down. "My sister works in billing," she said. "She told me your office is auditing records. Don't play with me." Eris's friends suddenly looked like strangers. Eris's karma didn't arrive as a dramatic scene. It arrived as consequences, fast and unavoidable. Within a week, she was suspended pending review. Then she was terminated. The story that spread wasn't Oren can't satisfy her. The story became, Eris tried to blame her husband while she was scrambling to cover her own mess. The apology came after the fallout, exactly as Serena predicted. Eris showed up at our house in Fort Washington with swollen eyes and a soft voice. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was scared. I didn't mean it. I was under pressure. I needed you." She reached for my hand like she hadn't used that hand as a punching bag. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I stepped back and said, "You meant it every time you laughed." Then I added, "You don't get to break me for cover and call it fear." Her face twisted, and for a second the mask slipped. Annoyance, not remorse. I filed for divorce quietly. No social media posts. No speeches. No revenge tour. I let the paperwork speak. The evidence sat where it belonged, and the courts saw what it needed to see. I kept my job, kept my routine, and stopped trying to earn love from someone who only respected leverage. My transformation wasn't loud. It was private and clean. I moved into a modest place back in Alexandria, started a small compliance consulting side business, and rebuilt my sleep one full night at a time. I didn't need the world to clap. I needed peace to be real. Months later, I ran into Eris in a grocery store in Largo. She looked smaller, not physically, emotionally, like someone whose trick stopped working. She opened her mouth like she wanted to speak. I nodded once, polite, distant, and kept walking, because the truth did speak, and it didn't need my anger to be powerful. It just needed me to stop protecting the lie. And once I did, everything she built on shame collapsed under its own weight, quietly, realistically, and for good. If you love how he stayed calm and let the evidence speak, share this with someone who's been gaslit into silence. And comment one word: clarity, because the quiet comeback always hits the hardest. The end.